Right, good evening, and thanks for clicking on to the second video of today, Thursday, the 14th of November. We do have so many things going on at the moment, it's hard to know where to start. Earlier on this morning, I recorded the tropical outlook, looking at the busy West Pacific as well as the interest over the Caribbean that is expected to develop over the next wee while or so. So stay tuned over the next few days. We're going to do an update on the tropics. As I made mention in yesterday's video, Vogan Weather and Lee at Highland Weather have teamed up. We're going to be looking at his terrific, great coverage, automated weather network, his weather station network across the country. It's going to be interesting to follow this over the next several days. We're talking about temperatures 14, 15 Celsius at the moment. This week, we could be talking about a struggle to get much above freezing, nights in and close to double digits below freezing as we have the first major Arctic air mass of the season coming southbound. I say major Arctic outbreak because this is more of a proper winter time Arctic outbreak. We're still early. November Arctic outbreaks tend to be a little bit less than what you would get later into the winter season, obviously, with various parameters such as the air mass overall, warmer sea surface temperatures, etc., etc. But this will be the first proper Arctic outbreak of the season. It is matching up with the MJO phase 7 and 8. We've seen Arctic outbreaks of a late summer, early autumn back in September and October. This is the next wave of Arctic air coming in as predicted here on the channel. We're going to look at the details a little bit, or try to look at some of the individual models with regards to potential for snow and possibly even touching on how cold it may get next week, because it still remains somewhat open to question. But a massive thanks to Lee for hooking up with us, and we will look forward to working together. Looking forward to sharing some of his amazing data as well. Some of those sites within the Highland Glens in pretty significant cold spots as well, where cold tends to be maximised. So it's going to be interesting to watch as we progress through the next wee while or so. But speaking of anything but cold, Iceland, we're going to look at that in just a second. We've seen an absolutely unbelievable temperature this afternoon recorded on the eastern coast. But also this is a graphic here produced by Dan Harris of the Met Office, showing that through the first 12 days, so this was as of, I believe, a couple of days ago, we'll have many areas of the country recording 0% average rainfall through the first 12 days of November. So this is obviously, as I said in yesterday's video, this is the mildest and driest opening 11 days, now 12, for the UK of any November in recorded history. And you can see here, anywhere from the south coast all the way up to the north coast, we've got many stations that have barely recorded any measurable rain. This is in very stark contrast to what is going on to the south of the UK over Iberia, where we obviously have a significant rainfall situation with high pressure essentially shielding the UK from any weather from the Atlantic, weather going north, weather going south. That has been the case now for several weeks now. But it looks as if this is a tweet here by Hod Data. I think that is how you pronounce it. I really probably not pronouncing that and embarrassing myself. But listen, it is what it is. But they produce some very interesting statistical analysis. I'll get there eventually. Statistical analysis showing the probability for late November into early December in terms of rainfall distribution. It looks as if here that the UK through the latter half of November into the first week or so of December is generally going to stay on a similar note in terms of rainfall deficit across the north. So could this be the driest November on record? That could be a question mark. But also you notice that we've still got abnormally wet conditions down across Iberia. So the flood threat we've seen over recent days, we've seen it on social media, more flooding in parts of Spain. And that looks as if that threat is going to continue into the month of December. But there is potential for change, and this kind of coincides quite nicely. They interacted with me a little earlier discussing this, and obviously, I'd put on the top of this tweet here by them saying that the potential growing for continued dry UK, wet Iberia through the remainder of this month and into December. And then they responded by saying that there is a possibility of change. Now, this would coincide very nicely with the shift in the MJO, but basically they say that if my statistical part holds true, the northern and western fringes of the UK may experience wet conditions. However, during the last 12 days of December, the analysis suggests even wetter conditions, as can be seen in the photo for the early last third of December. I have posted some analysis for Northern Europe last week. Here, you may would like to have a peek at them. So basically, this is showing that through the second half of December, it still remains fairly wet across Iberia, if you notice, but it turns wetter across the northwest. That, to me, would suggest the return of more Atlantic dominance once again. Now, if we go into phases 3, I would suspect that we may see the increased chance of storminess. And I do expect possibly a week, 10 days, pushing maybe even a fortnight of a colder regime sets in this upcoming weekend. But I do suspect that we are going to go back into the warmer phases. So if you look at this off the ECMWF, this cluster chart here showing that we're stuck in phase 1 at the moment, it kind of descends into the null phase. So this black line is the ensemble mean of the ECM run. You can see here, upcoming 5-day period, we go into the null phase of phases 2 and 3, but then it becomes a little bit more amplified into, basically phase 2 into phase 3. Then in an amplified way, it goes into phases 4 and 5. And that would definitely coincide quite nicely with a phase 3, 4, and 5 of the MJO. Basically, you would see the block dissipate over the North Atlantic and Greenland. We would open the floodgates once again to the Atlantic weather, moving back into the UK pattern once again. That is what I'm visualising even before I seen this chart sent to me this afternoon. I think we are going to go into a milder regime during the month of December here. So I've highlighted why I think it's going to turn colder, but I'm also emphasising that I think it's going to turn milder. Behind that, I can see a change coming. I spoke about Iceland. So the setup is such that we've got unusually warmer riding around the top of this high that is now starting to shift west of the UK and Ireland. So we're starting to see the evolution of change taking place with the high that has been so dominant across the UK and Ireland, bringing that 0% rainfall for the first 11, 12 days of this November. We're starting to see that high, that block, start to shift westwards. But in doing so, it's transporting unusually warm subtropical air northwards between a system over the northwest Atlantic and the high over the east-northeast Atlantic. We're seeing that flow getting driven in between the weakness, in between the two weather systems. And we're seeing unusually warmer at the 5,000 foot level over the top of Iceland. Then you factor in a squeeze in the isobars, so you're increasing the winds. And at the time of recording, so this is at 5 p.m. UK time, we've still got a 21 Celsius right there on the west coast, or on the east coast, should I say, of Iceland. Now, why are we seeing this level of warmth? Now, there is a whole combination of different factors, but you've got the Föhn effect. You've got unusually warm temperatures. We did see the temperatures in the UK back last week record 19 Celsius, for example. And even today, 15.7 Celsius here in the north of Scotland at Vogan Weather HQ. We've seen temperatures close to that up across the Altnahara area this afternoon. By the way, Lee at Highland Weather was recording temperatures into the -4s around the Carr Bridge area this morning and towards Braemar. So this is the interesting thing that I'm looking forward to showing you some of Lee's network as well, because we're going to be seeing some of the coldest temperatures anywhere in the UK. These are accurate readings as well. It's all online as well, so the data comes in real time. So it's going to be quite interesting to follow this going forward, and I'll be interested to see just how cold things are going to get next week. But essentially what we're looking at here is an unbelievable temperature. Temperature reached 23.8 Celsius on the east coast this afternoon. This beats the Iceland record set. But what was this? It was set back in 1999, and it breached the record by 0.6 Celsius. This is higher than the October national record, and it's also a world record high for this latitude so late in the year. So this is a tweet here by Thierry Goose. This is breaking weather news this afternoon. Iceland reached 23.8 Celsius, and it's due to the reasons that I've just explained. Unusually warm air mass initially, but we've also got very strong winds blowing across the island of Iceland, and then as these winds descend the mountainous areas just to the west, very similar idea to the Fern effect on the Murray Coast area, where you get those strong south to southwesterly winds blowing over the Grampians, over the Cairngorms. You get the descent, the air mass then compresses, heats up as it does so, and we've seen essentially a more extreme version of that taking place over Iceland. What's going to be fascinating about this is we could see one of the biggest swings in temperature ever recorded on the island of Iceland when you factor in what's going on now versus around 3-4 days from now. We are going to be talking about bitterly cold conditions, sub-freezing wind chills, snow, ice. What a contrast that's going to be when you factor in the 23.8 this afternoon. So an incredible swing is coming for Iceland, but also for the UK itself. So speaking of the UK, let's have a look at the current temperatures. Very mild indeed across particularly the north of the UK. We've still got 12-13 Celsius despite the fact that darkness has now set in. We've got the 6s, 7s across the north of England. Then as you go further south, still got the low teens, low double figures across the bulk of Wales, southwestern England. And then we've got the 8s and 9s across parts of eastern England. Got still reasonably mild conditions across Ireland and Northern Ireland also. Looking at Europe as well specifically. And then we'll get into the ideas with regards to the change coming up. So it would help if I actually hit the right button, wouldn't it? So this is the European view, and we've got a chilly east versus milder west. And you've got some very mild conditions, obviously, up in Iceland here. And even down across Iberia, we're seeing temperatures trim back to the low 20s. So we're probably pushing, when you actually factor in anywhere through the Mediterranean from Iberia all the way to Turkey, we're actually talking about Iceland being one of the warmest spots in Europe today. For the nearly the middle of November, that's pretty remarkable stuff, actually, when you think about that. Anyway, let's have a move on here. So this is the 850 anomalies. Again, the greatest anomaly anywhere within the North Atlantic and Europe is essentially over Iceland this afternoon, hence why we've seen what we've seen. Let's have a look and see what takes place going forward. So this is off the ECMWF. Mild conditions at the moment here, rotating around that area of high pressure, chilly air driving south with the trough into Eastern Europe. Then we'll play through the loop. Look at the change. So these are the 850 temperatures now, by the way. We're seeing it moving down over Iceland. Iceland gets it before we do, obviously, and in a more potent way compared to what we do. We obviously see this air mass slightly moderate over the relatively warm waters between Iceland and Scotland here. But then as we play through, you can see here this air mass then drives south. Question marks are the development of a trough over the western North Atlantic. Now, what we are essentially seeing is tropical cyclones over the far west Pacific, releasing heat northwards. That is then buckling the jet, creating energy, creating wave breaks within the Rossby wave train. And that is essentially what is now leading to this chain reaction across the northern hemisphere, and then allowing this shift with the high over Europe to then back westwards here, because it's the change in the ripple effect over the North Pacific, North America, then into the Atlantic Basin, and then that is the reasons why we see it. But it's all linked up with the MJO. Now, the latest run of the ECMWF, I've refused to show you operational deterministic runs because they flex back and forward. Like I've said in recent videos, if I was to just simply show you each individual model run, you're going to see a different forecast every time I speak. In fact, I could produce 3 videos per day, tell you a different outcome. Looking at the trends, looking at the ensembles, Look at the deep dive of the Met Office if you want to know a little bit more about the ensembles. A terrific piece of analysis and discussion about what ensembles are. I would greatly encourage you to watch that because it's quite a fascinating piece of information shown there. But you see here that there is a dip in the jet stream developing according to the ECM model here. This is Tuesday of next week. You've got an area of low pressure that forms in that dip. The collision between warm and cold air. Sometimes when you've got that little dip in the jet, that then creates the air to pile up, forces lift, and then creates a circulation to develop. And that is exactly what takes place here. So we've got an area of low pressure developing, seen by the model. This latest run shows it across the south of the UK, but we need to keep an eye on this. It could go further north. It could push even further south. It may not develop at all. And areas of low pressure create moisture and then also enhance the threat of more significant snowfall. So areas of low pressure with the cold is what you want to see if you're looking for snow in the first place. Look at that air mass driving over Iceland. Minus 15 Celsius at 8:50 over Iceland. When we're talking about 23.8 Celsius recorded this afternoon, that, like I said, without hyping it up, without getting carried away, that would be one of the biggest swings in temperature ever recorded in Iceland, I think anyway. So playing through the loop, you can see here that minus 15 isotherm hanging over Iceland. We're not going to get that, but you can certainly see the elongated, stretched out element to this trough, which is going to be then interesting to see. Looks as if it's got a negative tilt to it as well. So let's look at the UK specifically then and see what it's showing with regards to the overview chart here, and then we'll see what type of outcome this may produce. So again, long way out. This is going to be subject to change. There's the frontal system moving southwards, wind, rain, and then colder air on the backside. Then we've got this rash of wintry showers rattling through on a very stiff northwesterly wind, going to increasingly turn colder as this cold front continues to descend south. I need to plug in my laptop because the battery's running low. I'm speaking that much that it's starting to drain the battery. But you can see here that we've got this rash of showers blowing in. Now the air is going to turn colder and colder, so the precipitation will turn more wintry, even to low levels. Nothing unusual for this time of the year, obviously. And then there's the area of low pressure. The question mark is how much cold air is going to be associated with this low will determine snowfall projections. The latest run of the ECM doesn't show a particular significant amount of moisture, or should I say winteriness with that. But then that feature moves through and the next system moves in. And what's going to happen is that first feature is going to then pull in some cold air. That next system will meet that colder air. And look at this here. It's running in. That moisture is running into colder air. And we could see some sort of snow event taking place. But again, it's all about the finer details. In each run, GFS, ECM, ICON, arpegg, all are going to have slightly different starting conditions, therefore very different outcomes as a result of that. But the ECM model, this current run is indicating that we have a significant snow event north of Birmingham, up towards Manchester, up towards the south of Scotland here. Very cold northerly winds on the backside of that. That's the ECM run for Monday into Tuesday. Look at the squeeze and isobar. So very strong winds, if you notice here, associated with this flow. And looking at the 850 temperatures, you can see that we have got some rather chilly air. Looking at snow depth, this is how it's looking. So that is quite a robust looking snow depth chart. Let's have a look at the GFS model. Same time frame, less, but again, it's printing out some snow across northern England, also northern Scotland. Let's look at the overview chart and see what it's indicating here real quick. You can see here, skip back. Again, not an awful lot happening, not an awful lot of moisture. There's the cold front moving in. Cold air digs south. Play through the loop here. Still northerly winds, chilly air. There's that first feature moving through. It looks as if it's going to try and snow across Northern Republic of Ireland, then into Northern England. Rain on the south side where it's a little bit too warm. Play through. You can see here, again, features running that northerly flow is going to enhance the snow showers potentially, and it looks as if the GFS has a little feature running south, develops an area of low pressure, and then enhances the snow across the north here. That next feature, if you notice here, ECM has it further north, the GFS further south. So you get the overall idea. And again, we're only on Thursday. We've still got several days left to determine exactly what takes place. In terms of how cold, I reckon there's going to be places in the north of the UK that struggle to get above freezing. And like Lee said to me in a message yesterday, could see some of his sites very exposed, very low lying within valley areas or glens where the cold air collects during the stillness of night. We could see temperatures in the double figures below freezing. That would not surprise me at all. So, lots to digest today. I hope you've enjoyed the content. Be sure to check out Tropical Outlook if you're interested. And I'll be back with more weather content tomorrow. Enjoy the rest of your Thursday. Bye for now.